Hey Mariah, how are you?
Hi, Grant. I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. I'm super stoked to have you on the show because we're going to dive into mental performance and your passion for mental skills. But we're going to learn a little bit more about your mindset and just your journey of being a professional soccer player and all the things that you had to do to get prepared for this stage, for this level. And I can only imagine all the cool things that you've gone through and all the hard stuff, because every journey is different. There's always going to be some adversities and struggles. So I'm really interested and excited to share your story.
Yeah, thank you. There's been a ton of both. So yeah, lots of material that we could wade through on this one.
Beautiful. Well, let's get into one of my favorite topics is mental toughness. And I know that you've been playing soccer majority of your life. And when you think about reflecting on your whole career, like share a specific time where you had to be mentally tough.
Yeah, and I think there's so many because I think mental toughness is probably what drove me from the start to where I am right now. But just maybe primary recency effect, but I'm gonna have to say this whole last year as a whole um, has made me rely so much on my mental toughness just to get through the day to day in regards to the challenges presented by my season, by dealing with COVID and the lockdowns and constant test, following protocols and injuries I've experienced this year. I think really going back to those basic foundational things, which I think mental toughness is one of them for me, and relying on that to kind of carry me through my process and the day to day to just really keep performing at what is an acceptable level for me, while also ignoring or compartmentalizing all these other outside factors kind of constantly nagging for attention.
Right. And when you think about, I mean, all of us have gone through shit this past year, and shit makes great fertilizer. So when you think about managing injuries and managing COVID and testing and all these moving parts, when you think about mental toughness, like what has allowed you to keep pushing through and not getting broke? So I always talk about bending and breaking. Like for you to be mentally tough, there's a lot of factors that come into play. But when you get into a situation where you need to be mentally tough, you need to bend, usually with your breath, and there's some other things. Yeah. So what are some of the things that's allowed you to bend through this past year? Like how have you gone through the adversity of it?
Yeah, I think, I have a counseling background in psychotherapy, so I'm very much into my feelings and feeling them and, introspecting and naming them and just sitting and being with them. So I think for me, the bending is accepting those, and the kind of preventage of the breaking is not lingering on them for an extended amount of time to feel them, but then not overthink and maybe then switch to action. Okay, what can I control in this moment? What can I control? And I'm a big person who likes to have an effect or to be taking steps forward in whatever way. So one of my injuries this year, I wasn't allowed to run yet, and so instead of just sitting and watching practice, I started speed walking, like a woman in the morning with my little hand weights and trying to get my heart rate up as fast as I could, or just marching in place. And I remember years ago, one of my trainers telling me, he's like, you're like a cat on a hot tin roof. Like you just can't stay still. And I think that's very true, because for me, I find peace and I find progress in that 1%, in making tiny steps forward, and just having an impact on my own success or recovery or whatever it is I'm working towards in any way that I possibly can.
And I'm going to put you on the spot on this, but you can take some time to think about it. But when you think about mental toughness or being mentally tough, I ask this question all the time, and people, to be honest with you, I've only heard like one or two of my guests have almost the exact same answer. Pretty much there's always a different definition or a different perspective of what mental toughness means to them. And I always ask that because you and I, we know what mental toughness means. We know what success means and grit and all that, but we all have a different meaning to it. So when you think about mental toughness, and you can probably connect or resonate the last year or so, like when you think about some of the stuff you've gone through, what does mental toughness mean to you?
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. Everybody has different examples because, you know, in the research, and you see all these different definitions of what it actually is. But for me, it's really, in my mind, the phrase just came, just keep going. That to me, being mentally tough is whatever's thrown your way, whatever amount of injuries, whatever opponent, whatever, you know, whatever obstacles you find in front of yourself, that you have the mental fortitude or the mental grit, you know, all these terms we put around,
Right.
To persevere. And again, sometimes it might be, you know, baby steps forward, sprinting forward, but, you know, however slow you need to go. For me, mental toughness is to just keep going in the wake of whatever's in front of you.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's go back a little bit to kind of where all this started. I mean, we won't go all the way back to youth, but let's say high school. And I want to look at the development of Mariah's mindset. So when you think of your high school year and then your college, you played at Washington State, and then now your professional career. If you go back into high school, if you would describe your mindset as a soccer player, like what would that word or words be in high school? And then what would it be in college and then in professional?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's so interesting to look back at my high school self now, kind of under a new lens, now that I've learned a lot more about mental performance and, you know, healthy mindsets and all that stuff. So it's so funny to look back at where I was, but the word that came to mind was probably perfectionist or extreme. I did not know balance. I was 100%, 100 miles per hour all the time in like sacrifices, the Rocky montage of training.
I love it.
You know, in the rain, like I was just, yeah, I was all in. And I think I clung to that a lot because it is what drove me to success, and it's what gave me so much. But it wasn't till later, in different environments, that I did learn I was missing some other more important aspects to my mindset and just kind of my approach to sport. But again, it is what it is, and it happened, and it got me to where I am. So it's all part of the process, and I wouldn't trade any of it, even knowing what I know now. So there's that. Yeah, it's the little teenage perfectionist in me.
And then when you went to Washington State and now you're at the D1 level, did that perfectionism, was it still there, or was there more, when I say maturity and just growing up and looking at things differently, did things change with the mindset, or did it kind of stay with you?
I will say that seeds were sown, but nothing grew yet. Like I remember one of my coaches telling me, like, you just gotta let your hair down a little bit, like have fun, you're in college. And again, I was like, no, I'm here to be the best, and, you know, sacrifices. And I did have fun, and I did have, you know, a college experience, but it was very much me revolving my whole life around soccer. And I remember I was somebody who always got good grades. And I think in my 4.0s, you know, in high school, in my first semester of college, I was not concerned really about my grades. And I think I still pulled like a 3.55 or something like that. But for me, it was like, I'm here to play soccer and just be the best. And then, you know, later as I started, that was my freshman year. So there was a bit of growth throughout the 4. But it was me realizing, like, oh, you are smart enough to also get 4.0s in college, and you can do both. And, you know, you have this life outside that's fun, and it's, you know, it's college. But I definitely was still probably a little too extreme. The real balancing act didn't come till till later, but it did come, which is the important part. And you grow up and you learn so much, and you look back and it's that classic, I wish I knew then what I know now type of thing. But it was enough again to get me to where I am. So,
Totally.
we're baby stepping our way to a healthy psychological environment
There you go.
that I created. Yeah.
Well, so like you're in high school, perfectionism, extreme, even though that kind of seemed like it followed you a little bit in college, but if you were to look at it a little bit different and give it a different name or words, like what would that be when you were at Washington State? Still extreme, still trying to be perfect?
No, I would change it maybe from perfectionist to committed, extremely committed, or determined's been a word that people have used.
Cool.
For me. But I think I just remember having all these speakers and stuff, and actually it was probably after Washington State in grad school when I was actually playing in England then, before I had signed a professional contract, and we had this gold medalist come in and talk to us, and he just kept going on about the balance and outside of sport. And in my mind I'm all the movie montages, and like it's all about sport. And then it wasn't until later, and I think that was one of the messages that really sunk in, that was like, you need a balance. And in moving to my professional life setup, especially abroad, where maybe your life outside isn't as full, isn't as structured as maybe back home, you can't pass every day with that 2 hours of practice or a gym session or whatever being your be all end all, because then you have a bad day at training and your whole life is ruined for 24 hours until you get the next chance to go to practice. So right. I think actually taking that transition to being a professional is what finally helped me to create a balance. And I still had all that determination and the mental toughness and the diligence to do all those small details, like the recovery, the sacrifice, and all that stuff that took me to the professional level. But it was actually when I got there that I was able to maybe mentally create or start to create the best environment for myself.
So would you say now that as a professional, it's balance?
Yeah, I would say maybe balance would be a good word for it. And I think, I would just say wiser. I feel so much wiser having undergone so many different or lived through so many different playing environments, and playing in different cultures and relating to people on so many different levels, and just accumulating more experience paired with my incredibly introspective nature. I'm just constantly learning more things about myself and how to balance, and what what leads to my best or my ideal kind of atmosphere for myself.
Well, I love it that you brought up wisdom, because especially when I'm working with younger athletes, we talk about that. We talk about reflection, putting in a reflective practice. And you don't have to wait until you're 30, 40, 50, 67 years old to gain wisdom. You can gain wisdom when you're 17 years old, but you have to spend time looking at what went well, what didn't go well, and what lessons did you get. And the more you can do that, you're building wisdom there. So when you think about you being introspective, I feel like you're kinesthetic, just like me. Have you built in a reflective practice like the whole way, or is that something that you've kind of adapted to as you became a professional?
I think there was always some degree of reflective practice, but I think it's definitely changed and improved. Because I remember in college, we'd always watch film, and I would watch every game I ever played, the whole game, with like a little paper tracking what I did well and what I didn't do well, and then thinking about that. But I think it was more on a physical performance level at that stage. And it really wasn't until after I did my master's program that I think it became a more mentally centered thing. And I really think training to be a counselor helped me immensely in regards to awareness. Cause I mean, that's what the whole degree was us, emptying all our own closets and recognizing our triggers and working through our own stuff so that we could become ready to help other people. And I think that practice helped me so much as a soccer player as well, to be able to identify different things and just become way more hyper aware of everything, of what I was thinking, of what I was feeling, of recognizing, conducive levels of anxiety versus detrimental, or, how I looked at things. And yeah, so I think honestly, the grad school timing and then me signing my first professional contract probably just happened at the perfect time, that I was finally able to learn these skills, to learn such a heightened form of awareness, and then also use that in my soccer career.
That's awesome. I love that. I love it how it was kind of serendipitous it all kind of gelled together at the same time for you. When you think about switching gears here a little bit and think about motivation, I want to talk about that only because here's someone that you played soccer for most of your life, and you were like, it seems like you're like extreme, like you left everything out on the field, on the pitch all the time, right? And I share this because my motivation, I played football for 13 years. And when I was in high school, my motivation, it was totally extrinsic. It was, if I didn't have a good game, people are not going to like me. And if I had a good game, my stock went up. So I was riding this emotional roller coaster ride on if people like me or not. And which I had all the friends in the world at the time. I was so worried about, being accepted. And then when I got into junior college and in college, I got over that and was more like totally focusing on the process and refining the smoothness of the way that I threw the ball and hand off the ball and faked and all that kind of stuff as a quarterback. But I remember going back to high school, like it was like emotional warfare for me, because it was just every week, like, is my stock up or down? So when you first started playing soccer, like what was the motivation and how much has it changed?
I love this question. And I think 100% we followed a similar trajectory, we'll say. I don't know when I first started playing, but definitely like my teenage club, varsity high school soccer, it was exceptionally extrinsic. Wow, why can't I say this word? External.
I love it.
Yeah, but I don't think I knew that until much later. And it was actually when I started researching and studying more about mental performance and sports psychology that I read about distorted perceptions and all this stuff, and this idea that achievement is equal to worth. And the same thing actually came up in grad school, talking about conditions of worth and how we're shaped to believe that, I'm only worthy if X, Y, and Z. And we all have different conditions of worth placed on us, different times from different people. Right. But it was really like that little light bulb moment, like, oh my God, that's me. Oh no, like that's so me. And that kind of laughing, but like, oh, cringy, like, oh, that's unhealthy and that's you. But it was definitely like people like me because I'm athletic. I'm popular because I'm a star on the soccer team. And of course I had other friends and right. Other reasons. But it was definitely this thing. And I actually have a running joke now for probably decades with my mom and my godmother, maybe my best friend too, about man, we really wish you could see you how other people see you, because we don't just like you because you're good at all this stuff, but in my mind it was, it's because I'm fast that right. People like me, and just these very like caveman, archaic, very just right. strange perceptions, but they were so concrete for me. They were 100%, this is fact. Right. This is how it is. Yeah, because
we create that. We love talking to ourselves. And we're great storytellers. So as soon as we hook onto that story, it plays and it loops over and over again. It becomes our reality.
Yeah, 100%. And it becomes that, and you look at the flip side, the fear of failure is, oh, if I don't hit a home run today, no one will like me. Or, if I pass the ball to the other team, there, like you said, there goes my stock. It's plummeting. It's down performance. Yeah.
Well, and you brought up fear of failure, because that's something that man, I talk about that all the time with athletes. It comes up all the time, that and confidence. But when you think about, you talked about it earlier, when you have a bad performance, bad practice, you have 24 hours to kind of be with it until the next opportunity for you to kind of move on from it. I know when I look back at my younger self, all the things that I know now and what I teach, if I only knew how to deal with a poor performance. Like, I had the understanding of failure to me is not showing up, not trying. It's not about mistake. A mistake's an opportunity. It's feedback. It's information. And if I would have learned that way back in the day and not look at it as a negative emotion, like, I could have gotten excited. I could have reframed it. So how do you rinse a bad performance from your mind? How do you deal with a bad practice, bad game?
Yeah, well, I think my answer to this question now is entirely different than it would have been at any other stage in my career. But I'm very much in that mindset where I get excited, more so now, because it's information, because it's an opportunity to get better. And it's an opportunity to fix things that I didn't necessarily do the best I could. I'll say that 90% of the time. Other times, when I think about just like last summer, I'm doing personal training sessions, I'm telling a girl, like, no, like, don't get mad. This is exciting because we're finding an area we can improve on. And then, like, I do a drill, and I shank a ball, and I'm just like infuriated. And I'm like, oh, do as I say, not as I do, type of thing. So it's still it's come a long way, but are we infallible? Yes. But it is, that fear of failure for me and confidence that you brought them both up have been huge learning points for me, actually, probably in the last couple of years, because like my intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, confidence was something that I didn't realize was coming externally until I left certain environments, and I was no longer getting it from a coach or getting it from a teammate. And all of a sudden, light bulb, I am someone who has been unable to create my own confidence, like self-confidence. And it was kind of this panic about, where am I going to get it? Like, how do I do this? And I had survived so long unknowingly getting it from coaches who would just blow smoke up my ass to like hype me up for the game. Like, I remember back to high school soccer, my coach would come up to me for the game, and be like, oh, hey, the coach from the other team just came up to me and was like, oh, is that number, 3 still here? Or did she graduate? And he was like, oh man, she was only a freshman last year, only to find out this conversation never happened. Like, it was just a tactic by him to, pump me up and make me feel really good. But I always had that. I always had the coach that was like, Mariah, you have to mark this attacker this game. Yes, she's in the national pool. Yes, she's done this and that, but you're you and you got this. And just having people, that's literally all I needed, was somebody to tell me, like, we believe in you to get this job done. And that fueled me for decades. So I mean, having that knowledge and that conscious come to me of being like, oh man, I am actually fragile, and here I thought I was so confident, and it was just people doing it for me for so long.
For sure. And man, I've learned so many things over the years. It's like, man, if you want to be confident, get prepared. That's the first step. And then there's things you can do, like we call it switching on. Well, how do I switch on my confidence before I even actually play? And if I lose my confidence during play, how do I get it back? And so all these things that I've learned, I'm like, man, if I knew that when I was playing football, I mean, it'd be a different game. But it is what it is. I'm in service, and so I get to teach people. So since we are talking about mental performance and teaching athletes, I know you have this strong passion for mental performance and mental skills training. When did you start getting connected, or when did you get like introduced to this type of work?
Oh, to this type of work, geez. I think I've always had a passion for sports psychology, and I, read so many books, took some classes in college, and it wasn't actually maybe until this past year that the owner of our training field is actually a mental coach. And some girls from the team started seeing him, and as I became more obsessed and was learning more about the kind of mental aspect to elite performance, I started talking to him and, started talking to you and trying to get as much information as I could about, what this is, and just became super excited about the possibility of paying it forward. And I don't know, of just, again, that idea of knowing, wishing you knew what you know now when you were younger.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and
and now, I feel like I forgot what question you asked me. I just went off on that. So we might have to trim this part.
I love it. Well, I mean, it's about just your exposure to the work and your passion for it. But since you are still playing at the professional level, but you are now starting working with athletes, when you think about this work, because there's all these different strategies or interventions, what's the one, or if it's more than one, share, but like what's the one that you love the most to, as either an athlete or as a mental performance coach, to work with athletes or work on yourself? Is it visualization? Is it meditation? Is it mantras? What are some of the like techniques that you get drawn to?
Well, at the moment, I'm super passionate about a couple of things. I think the personal one has got to be dealing with a perfectionist mindset and like the fear of failure, and just reframing your failures as something entirely different, and instead of those being negative things, being stepping stones to an even more optimal performance. And I think for me, it's really, I think maybe if I had to peg it on one, it would be self-talk, and, what we feed ourselves and constantly reiterate to ourselves, becoming our own truth. And so making sure that what we're telling ourselves is, kind, because I'm sure this comes from a personal place. I historically was not very nice to myself, the hardest person on myself, and, the most critical. So I think it's, again, that, I've learned so much, and can I help somebody at an earlier stage in their career, avoid some of the mistakes or taking the long road like I did. So that would be one. The other one that I'm super excited about is actually more so to do with coaching and coaches. Yeah, just because I was fortunate enough to have a lot of great coaches growing up, and it wasn't until I went abroad and talked to other people that I learned not everybody had the same experience. And just playing under so many different coaches and seeing the negative effects of toxic atmospheres and the positive effects of really great atmospheres, I'm very passionate at the moment about working with coaches to create healthy, positive atmospheres, and how to get the best out of their players, and kind of melding, creating good relationships with people and relating to people, and delivering your specific coaching knowledge in a way that is conducive to a healthy psychological atmosphere.
Awesome. And I know you're still working on it, but I want this to be an opportunity for you to plug kind of what you're doing. So if my listeners wanted to learn more about your website and what you're doing, and your whole practice, how do they do that?
Yes, so we are just on the verge of launching. Very, very excited about it. And every time I talk to you, I get so much more excited about it. But it's called U+U Performance Coaching, and the website will be that when it launches. We're shooting for June soon. And I mean, if you find my personal social media, look Mariah Cameron up, and I'll have links up soon to the business media and stuff like that. But I'm just so excited to start paying some of this, harder knowledge forward. Yeah. And yeah, just staying connected and helping out.
I'm really excited just to kind of be on a little bit on this journey with you. And I know what it's like to start the practice. And so I'm excited to see it blossom. I'm excited to help you in any way as you move forward. So it's really cool to see, since I've been doing this, full time for 6-7 years, it's kind of nice to see someone that's starting and like full of energy and ready to rock. So it's really cool from my end.
It's a great reminder. Like I said, every time I talk to you, I get so much more excited, and my passion for it is reborn. So I feel like this next week's going to be one of those weeks where I'm totally immersed in working on it, because I'm just, again, rejuvenated and cool. Excited about all the possibilities and the effects that we can have as performance coaches.
Totally. Well, one more question before we sign off, and it's about reflection. So when you reflect in your whole career, what do you think you've learned the most about yourself?
Oh my gosh, what a hard question. We could do a whole podcast on this question. Right? I think it's got to be something tied up in self-love and in being just kinder to yourself. And that idea, like I was talking about self-talk, that what you feed yourself is real, whether it's, I'm terrible, I'm great, people don't like you if you don't play good, people do like me, like for who you are as a person. And that idea of whatever it is you're working on, to be your biggest fan and to support yourself and not rely on those external sources of validation, because at some point in your life you're going to find yourself, it's just going to be you and you. So make sure you like who you're hanging out with. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mariah, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your passion for this work. Again, really excited to see what you're going to do and how you're doing it. And it's just been awesome to share your whole story and just your mindset to my listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun to rehash and become even more aware of awesome. All the road I've covered up until this point.
Beautiful.